When I was 13, my granddad took me to the top of Brading Downs on the Isle of Wight to watch shooting stars. We had cheesy chips, tea, and I saw a sight that I'll never forget. After a few showers, he explained to me that shooting stars are not actually stars at all, but rather meteors, rocks that enter our atmosphere, collide with air molecules, and consequently leave a glow in their wake. I mustn't pretend to recall the evening in its entirety, or more accurately the morning, but if memory serves me well, after a moment of contemplation, I replied, "I can understand why shooting stars are so poorly named." To our ignorant and terrified ancestors, meteors would have been, minus their speed, indistinguishable from the stars behind them, as is reflected in a great many religious texts. At this point, I was already in awe, but then my granddad imparted a fact that cracked the core of my entire world, and to this day I still feel its reverberations. But I'll get to that in due course. First, I want to properly introduce the topic of this video. This is a break from my typical style of content, in which I combat religious and pseudoscientific claims, or comment on the rhetoric of religious and pseudoscientific apes, to have a rant. You can thus perceive this as a futile attempt to maintain my sanity, and perhaps, if you share my frustrations, yours too. In recent years, largely, I have to say, because of Brexit, I have become painfully aware of the corrosive nature of echo chambers and have consequently sought to avoid them, or at the very least step outside of those close to my heart regularly enough to recognise them. Ironically, this has led to me spending more time around religious people than irreligious people, which I almost recommend, if only because it enhances the gift of being around those who are, as Pascal put it, so made as not to believe. One such group in which the God Squad is strong is at my table tennis club. Most of the members are Christian, and yes, like the vast majority of modern Christians, outside of the central tenets, none of them share the same views. They are stellar examples of cafeteria Christianity. The average age of the community, like many table tennis clubs in the UK, is just short of 70, and so if you're looking for a reason for the high religiosity in an otherwise largely atheistic country, then there you have it. The league itself is comprised of teams from all around Hampshire, and most of the clubs, including our own, operate from either a converted or active church. This, naturally, spurs a lot of banter. They mock me for utilising the generous lease granted by the church, and I remind them that they're welcome, since it's my tax that predicates their freeloading faith, which now so graciously offers it back to me at a premium. When they win a game against me, they playfully thank Jesus, and when I win a game against them, I playfully thank Santa. When I lose an important match, they tell me that if I had only prayed, I would have won, and when they lose an important match, I tell them that I didn't pray for them because I didn't want to distract their God from his current occupation of giving aid to children in Africa. Humour is, as often noted, a great way to break tension, and we hit each other with it fairly hard, and honestly, I'd have it no other way. I'm sure, however, that every once in a while I overstep the mark, as do they when they celebrate the notion of me burning in hell for eternity for the crime of using the brain that apparently their God gave me. But at the end of the day, sticks and stones. One bit of banter, however, really gets under my skin, not because it's offensive, but because it's so absurd, and that is the Christian boasts of humility, which in and of itself is a contradiction. Christians frequently call themselves humble for their beliefs, and either implicitly or explicitly call me, the atheist, arrogant for insert speculative reason here. Now, I have no delusions of grandeur. I have been accused of arrogance in the past, and in some cases rightfully so. But to quote Christopher Hitchens, to claim that I am privy to the secrets of the universe and its creator, that's beyond my conceit. All religions, of course, boast of humility. In the Torah, Numbers 12, verse 3 states that Moses was exceedingly humble, more so than any person on the face of the earth. And the etymology of the word Islam is generally interpreted to mean submission to God, humility. But for Christianity, the claims of humility are much more pronounced, and for this reason, they are a more prominent part of their apologetic arsenal. Blessed are the meek, so says the book of Matthew. All who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted. And Philippians 2, verse 3, to give just one more example, warns, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." Indeed, unlike the submission of Islam, which is not humility, but rather servitude, many biblical verses do legitimately encourage humility. So what's the issue, one might ask? The issue is that these verses are predicated upon sheer arrogance. And here is where my rant starts. Christians believe that there is one perfect God and that we are created in its image, which is a not so subtle way of saying that we are, or are close to, perfect. Concerning humility, this isn't exactly a good start, is it? Granted, due to discovering many flaws with our apparatus, such as the appendix, wisdom teeth, and visual blind spot, many denominations now merely claim that our being created in the image of God is a metaphor for our ascension above all other animals. But even this contorted interpretation stinks of the hubris of us being chosen by the Almighty himself. Again, I say, not a good start. But as if this wasn't already a big enough slice of the not-so-humble pie, most Christians believe that the universe was created with us in mind, that we are a vital part of a grand divine plan, and that our consciousness will continue to exist long after the atoms that comprise us have been scattered to the winds. What's more, many Christians insist that they have a personal, one-to-one relationship with God himself, that they have interacted with or received messages from angels, and that God not only hears their prayers, but answers them. Indeed, in the mind of such a Christian, God rewrites his perfect plan in accordance to their selfish preferences, just so that they can, for instance, win a game at table tennis. It has to be said, this is extravagant arrogance, and to downplay it by referencing a handful of peculiar humble verses is preposterous. It's somehow worse than Alexander the Great naming 70 cities after himself, and then insinuating humility due to his participating in their conquest. Yes, it's an act of humility to acknowledge the presence of someone or something wiser than oneself, but to do so only in predication of the extraordinarily arrogant tenets of Christianity is absurd in the highest degree. Christianity is not and has never been humble. Christianity is as humble as Islam is peaceful and North Korea is a democracy. There is nothing humble about asserting that the universe revolves around you. Okay, rant over. Let's end where we began, by hopping back into my granddad's truck. While sipping on my third or fourth tea, gazing at the stars, my granddad got out of the truck and rustled around in the cargo bed. A few minutes later, he opened the passenger door, and before me was his telescope, pointing at what seemed to be a relatively big, though not particularly bright star. As I gazed upon it, my granddad said to me, "Son, that is Alpha Seer, and if there is a planet orbiting it, and upon that planet there is a member of a species with a telescope powerful enough to look back at us, then they are currently looking at the dinosaurs, since the light that enveloped the Earth 72 million years ago is only now reaching Alpha Seer." The great Carl Sagan once said that astronomy is a humbling experience, and it's facts such as those taught to me by my granddad that embody this truth. When I look at the night sky, I see an endless sea of galaxies, each with billions of stars, billions of planets, and since life emerged on Earth within at least 1 billion years, I assume the existence of billions of other organisms. This makes me feel utterly insignificant. I am a single member of a pattern-seeking primate on a mote of dust, suspended in a brief moment of time, and in a cosmic blink I will forever cease to be. And yet Christians, which still see themselves as the access of all this vastness, have the audacity to call me arrogant and themselves humble. Yeah, right.